Her betrayal sliced through me, a jagged wound too fresh for soft words. It was harsh, unyielding, and final. One evening, I walked into the apartment we shared, hands weighed down with grocery bags, a brief smile flickering before it faded. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, flashing an unknown name and a message. Last night was incredible. When can we meet again? The air in the room seemed to vanish. When she stepped in and saw me holding the phone, she didn't offer explanations, just a careless shrug and the words, "I'm sorry, but I don't love you anymore." I didn't shout or plead. I grabbed my jacket and left. My friend Ethan answered his door before I could knock twice. One glance at my face, and he knew. "You can take the guest room," he said, asking nothing more. I collapsed onto the bed, letting the shadows swallow me whole. But sometimes, life sends quiet heroes. For me, it was Ethan's mother, Linda, a woman in her late 50s with silver-threaded hair and eyes that held both keen insight and gentle warmth. The next morning, she arrived with a casserole in one hand and a bag of fresh produce in the other. "You need to eat," she ordered, as if I were her own child. I could barely whisper my gratitude. She didn't probe or demand my story. She simply placed a plate of food before me and made sure I took a bite. That evening, Linda returned with her friend Rosa, a woman whose serene presence and steady tone hinted at storms she'd endured. They didn't urge me to spill my pain. Instead, they filled the room with soft conversation about their day, simple, everyday tales that gently pulled me back to the present. Over the next few days, Linda and Rosa became constants in my world. They gave me small tasks: wash the dishes, sweep the floor, fold the laundry. At first, I felt foolish, a grown man guided like a child. But soon, their intent became clear. These weren't just chores, they were lifelines to keep me anchored. When your life falls apart, the hardest part is knowing what to do with empty hands. By the fourth day, the apartment smelled of fresh citrus, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of pride in something I'd done. One night, Rosa found me sitting on the edge of the guest bed, gripping an old photo of her and me, captured in a moment of joy now gone. Tears burned my eyes, unspilled. Why does it still hurt when I know she's the one who broke us? I whispered. Rosa sat beside me, her voice calm but firm. "You're grieving what you thought was true," she said. "Pain doesn't bend to logic, but it does lessen with time." Her words didn't erase the ache, but they gave it a shape, a name. It wasn't a wild monster anymore, it was grief, with a beginning and an end. The next evening, Linda invited me to her house. She set me to work in her kitchen, teaching me to cook lemon garlic chicken. She handed me a knife, showed me how to chop onions, and hummed quietly to the radio in the background. Rosa arrived later, carrying a fresh salad and bottles of ginger ale. We gathered around Linda's small dining table, and for the first time since my world collapsed, I laughed, a genuine, unforced laugh. That night, I slept through until dawn, no longer jolted awake at 3 a.m. to stare into the dark. That was progress. The week found a steady rhythm. Ethan pulled me out for morning jogs, my sneakers pounding the pavement with purpose. Linda stopped by with more groceries and new recipes to try. Rosa checked in every few days, sometimes bringing her old pottery pieces as subtle lessons. One day, she handed me a slightly imperfect bowl and said, "It's not perfect, but it holds what it's meant to." Like healing, I began to believe her. Then came the hardest task, returning to my old apartment to collect my things. Ethan came with me for support. I expected rage, but instead, a strange peace settled over me. I packed my books, my clothes, my tools, leaving behind the coffee mug we'd chosen together, the plant we'd picked out last spring. Those were hers now. I was done holding on to pieces of a story that no longer belonged to me. That evening, Linda hosted what she called a rescue dinner. It wasn't a celebration, just pasta, warm bread, shared laughter, and a small fire pit glowing in her backyard. "Bring something to burn," she'd said, "something you're ready to release." I brought a letter I'd written in those raw, early days after leaving, pages filled with anger and pain I'd never sent. I tossed it into the fire. The paper curled, blackened, and turned to embers that drifted skyward. For the first time, my chest felt light. From there, life began to take hold again. I started seeing a counselor Linda recommended. I jogged more regularly, the burn in my legs reminding me of my own strength. I learned 3 of Linda's recipes and Rosa's hearty lentil soup. I even fixed a neighbor's dripping faucet in exchange for a batch of warm brownies. Each small act stitched me back together, bit by bit. Then, unexpectedly, my phone glowed with her name. A long message, heavy with regret. I made a mistake. I miss you. Can we talk? I stared at it for what felt like hours. Months ago, I would have responded before the words fully registered. But now, clarity kept me grounded. I typed one line, I wish you well, but I'm moving on. Then I blocked her number. The next morning, I shared the moment with Linda and Rosa. They didn't cheer or lecture. Linda just nodded and said, "Good. She lost something rare." Rosa slid a mug of coffee toward me and added, "You chose your own value. That's what matters." I realized then that moving forward wasn't about erasing her from my mind. It was about refusing to let those memories define me. It was about choosing my worth over her betrayal. Linda and Rosa didn't just offer meals or tasks. They fed my resilience. They showed me I wasn't broken, only wounded, and that I could rebuild. And I did. Her betrayal had shattered my trust, but staying with Ethan, and the quiet, steady care of his mother and her friend, helped me rediscover my own strength. They helped me release the woman who tried to make me believe I was less than I am.